Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, and it's time to dive into another Next Fest. It's great to see demos make a comeback like this, and I'm always excited to try out as many titles as possible. But if you're looking for a bit of guidance, you've come to the right place as we take a look at a selection of the games that I've been able to play a bit of before Next Fest has even begun. As always, my focus is on games with strategic and tactical inclinations, and that includes everything from 4X to real-time strategy to city building, sim, colony management, and much more besides. If those are the kinds of games you enjoy, you might want to consider subscribing to the channel, but with no more time to waste on an introduction, and with timestamps down below, let's dive in. Warhammer Age of Sigmar Realms of Ruin is a fantastic upcoming real-time strategy game that I've had the honor of playing quite a bit of, thanks to the developers inviting me to a handful of digital events. The upcoming demo will be a great opportunity for you to sink into the world of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, playing the first 3 missions of the game's single-player campaign as the Stormcast Eternals, fighting against the Orc and Undead factions, the Orc Cruel Boys, and Night Haunts respectively. In the full version of the game, these factions are playable as well, and there's a multiplayer component that does a really good job of innovating on traditional concepts when it comes to everything from UI to how progression through tech and unit trees work, and much more as well. You'll be concerning yourself with population caps that increase over time through resource investments and upgrades, and when it comes to acquiring said resources, you're not mining them like in, say, StarCraft, or seeking out specific generation points for specific resources either, like in, say, Company of Heroes. Instead, the points that you capture themselves can have unique structures built on them based on your preferences to serve various purposes, which include generating one resource or the other, or acting as a source of reinforcements, providing defensive capabilities, so on and so forth. The fighting itself is squad-based with some special abilities for each unit type, with more available for unlock with the use of upgrades. Upgrades locked behind resource costs, and upgrades to buildings which themselves are locked behind additional resource costs as well. It's a lot of familiar ideas presented in a different way that limits the base building right down, and still maintains an essence of it in some ways. The single player is, of course, how you'd expect a narrative single-player RTS campaign to play. You get access to more mechanics and tools and toys over time, with specific set pieces and objectives across large maps that open up over the course of any individual mission, with cutscenes between missions and sometimes during them to actually flesh the story out. The production value is through the roof as well. Well written, fully voice acted, great visuals. You can tell a lot of time and effort went into crafting a great experience here, and the demo will put it all on display. Based off the tabletop wargaming system, each faction is distinct in its strengths, weaknesses, and fighting styles, and within each faction, there's a decent variety of units that provide their own strengths and weaknesses within the framework of the greater faction. You don't need to be familiar with the tabletop system or its lore to enjoy the gameplay mechanics or the narrative here. It's just good storytelling, and it's engaging gameplay. Definitely check it out if you want to try an RTS with some cool new ideas. Pioneers of Pagonia is the perfect spiritual successor to The Settlers, designed by the man behind the original The Settlers series itself, and it brings a lot of those mechanics that we all know and love from that series in, with a new coat of paint and some innovations alike. The Pioneers of Pagonia demo is an absolutely fantastic showcase of why you should be excited for this game. It'll let you experience key systems, it'll let you know what's to come still, and it won't really stop you from really figuring out if it's the game for you when it releases into early access later this year. If you like city builders, especially in the vein of Anno, if you like the original Settlers games, if you like complex production chains, and if you like watching living, breathing cities full of activity and hustle and bustle, you absolutely need to check Pioneers of Pagonia out. The demo has just 3 islands to check out, with the first being the easiest, with plentiful supply of natural resources within your starting region, while the 3rd island is the hardest, with some essentials just out of reach at first, requiring you to engage with some of the expansion and exploration mechanics right off the bat if you want to build much of anything. The release of the game will replace these preset maps with randomly generated maps instead to keep you on your toes, and with a massive variety of resources and job types for your residents at your disposal, it takes quite a bit of time for things to feel even remotely familiar, even with the preset maps of the demo. I dive into more depth in a video I've linked under the eye at the top right corner of the screen right now, and also at the end of this video, but to put it briefly, there are multiple different kinds of something as simple as wood. Some advanced goods require 4 different buildings worths of steps to produce, and most buildings can't even function without specialists that need to be trained at a specific training building with tools manufactured at appropriate types of smiths using the appropriate raw materials, from toolsmiths to armorsmiths to weaponsmiths, depending on what you're trying to get made. It's absolutely insane how many production chains there actually are to manage and just how many resources there are to look at and keep an eye on. I love it. One of my favorite aspects of the game, though, is its sheer scale, not just in the number of resources and the types of jobs available to your citizens, but I mean actual geographical scale. The demo will limit you to about 100 or so buildings and 80,000 square meters of expansion, but the full game goes well beyond that, and the demo build I played actually allowed me to build a lot more and explore a lot further too. And I've actually seen a gameplay demo at Gamescom, which was even bigger. It's wild. Now, it's not just about buildings and surface area though. As you can see, each individual person and resource is simulated, so you actually need to think about distances and travel times when it comes to the efficiency of your production chains. And with a demo starting with hundreds of citizens for you to manage, it only gets more and more numerically insane from there as your pioneers have children and expand your population over time. This is definitely a demo to try, as playing it for yourself will be the quickest way to realize why I'm so awed by it. Classified France 44 is turn-based tactics set during World War II, asking you to take on the role of soldiers dropped deep behind enemy lines to liberate France from the inside. You may have seen coverage of this game on the channel a couple of months ago already when I had access to an early build showcasing not just the tactical combat, but the strategic layer as well. This demo lets you dive into both aspects of the game and explore some of the interesting ideas on display for both. The strategic layer has you go from region to region, engaging in multiple missions to slowly liberate them one by one, gaining access to various benefits to bolster your rebellion ahead of D-Day. As you do so, you'll keep an eye on your supplies, manage a growing squad of capable combatants, and unlock everything from new guns and grenades to new skills and actions to new clothes? Now, that sounds funny at first, perhaps, but changing character uniforms will actually determine certain bonuses they might have access to during combat, and there's actually a whole system built around it where combatants can only wear variants of uniforms that belong to their nationality. It's a potentially minor in the grand scheme kind of a thing, but it's still an interesting idea that I thought was rather unique. Apart from that though, missions will send you chasing after new recruits, sabotaging enemy equipment, and doing all the typical things that you might expect to do behind enemy lines in the middle of war. What's really interesting though is that missions come in three varieties. Those that are classic turn-based tactical style where it's all action all the time, those that are a blend of action and stealth, and those that can be played stealthily from start to finish. For the stealthy variants, you spend a lot of time sneaking around as the game telegraphs enemy viewing cones and patrols turn by turn. All your troops are able to stealthily shank any enemies, but in the second style of mission that are a blend of action and stealth, you only get so many stealth kills before you kick off an ambush with a few bonuses to start with, still incentivizing you to be stealthy, even if just for that limited time. It does a good job of giving you that Commandos vibe without the real-time aspect of the Commandos games. That aside though, there's some pretty interesting ideas here with regards to how morale works too, with missed shots still applying pressure on enemies and suppressing them, and the Overwatch system here is unique as well, as far as my memory goes at least, not firing at the first enemy that waltzes through the Overwatch area, instead asking you to pull the trigger or not. There's more than just that to make Classified France 44 interesting, and I can definitely recommend giving it a shot during this next fest. Mars Tactics is a very interesting upcoming title that I've featured in my most anticipated upcoming games list before, because it has some really clever ideas that innovate in both the tactical and strategic layers as it pits labor versus capital in an all-out war for the Red Planet. I want to quickly remind viewers that I am affiliated with Hooded Horse, the publisher of Mars Tactics, and there are more details on that linked in the description down below, but of course that has nothing to do with the recommendation to play Mars Tactics. The game just has so many interesting ideas that I think any lover of turn-based tactics games will definitely want to check it out. Now, the demo features 3 missions that throw you into the action while also sharing some insight on key aspects of the game that exist in both the tactical layer and the strategic layer. To be clear, you cannot actually play the strategic layer in this demo, but the demo does hint at how the strategic layer works, with some nice sneak peeks in the trailer and on the Steam page as well. Either way, some of the mechanics on display include the need for prisoners of war that you can either interrogate for intel or convince to join your side. Or there's the valuable jets that help you transport troops quickly around the surface of the planet, or can instead be used to perform airstrikes. The battles have a bunch of innovative ideas to play with as well. The level of environmental destruction is next level, for example, and by that I mean you can literally level an entire battlefield if you want to. It even allows you to blow the ground up and build your own trenches with the help of explosives. You can flatten, like I said earlier, an entire base with well-placed ordnance, and since weapons fire uses actual ballistics to calculate hit chances, these actions have an actual impact to your tactical approaches. There's also a great degree of teamwork in the game. Certain actions will allow your squad mates to share action points among themselves, for example. Or you can toss magazines and unprimed grenades to an ally to have them pick it up and use when needed. Get that extra ammo to a friend in need, or get that extra range on a grenade with just a bit of daisy-chained throwing. Suppression mechanics allow you to steal action points from the enemy, whether you hit or miss with your shots, because let's face it, being shot at is scary either way, and sometimes you want to go for suppression when your hit chances are low, just, as you try to get into position to deliver those killing blows. I'm also a fan of the trait acquisition system here. I like it in my RPGs, and I like it in my tactics games when your characters gain skills and traits based on actions they actually take. It adds a cool element of discovery to the process of leveling up, and it feels a bit more realistic in my opinion. Either way, though it's not playable in the demo, we do know that the strategic layer is going to be very compelling here as well. There's a heavily asymmetric approach between capital and labor. The two factions will have different mechanics and systems. One will be able to ship resources in from Earth, another will rely on weapon customization, etc., etc. Apart from that, the way squad movement and reinforcement positioning in tactical battles is influenced by the strategic layer positioning is also compelling, and all in all, Mars Tactics is super fun with some really innovative ideas on display that I think are well worth checking out. Terminator Dark Fate Defiance might just be the Terminator game I've been waiting for all my life. I'm a huge fan of the original Terminator movies, the second one especially, but I like the first one well enough too. Either way, all my life I've been hoping for a good Terminator strategy game, and though yes, this one is set in the more recent renditions of the IP, it's got enough core similarities for me to be on board, especially since, Terminator IP or not, it looks like a solid sci-fi RTS with some decent depth and mechanics, a narrative single-player campaign worth engaging with, skirmishes against the AI, and multiplayer that will seemingly feature more than just the two factions that one might expect from a Terminator game. The single-player narrative is going to be a familiar format to fans of the genre, limited access to mechanics until they get unlocked over time, as well as unique set pieces and interesting setups that are meant to challenge the players more and more as the levels go on. But whether you're playing single or multiplayer, campaign or skirmish, there's quite a bit more detail than first meets the eye. For one, each of your squads, whether infantry or vehicle, are going to have all kinds of equipment that you need to manage, like mines and grenades of various kinds. Or they'll have different parts that you need to keep an eye on in terms of the overall health, like turrets and tracks whose destruction can cause trouble, as you might imagine. If your tracks blow up, you might not be able to move. If the turret blows up, you won't be able to shoot. Or in the case of vehicles as well, you might need to concern yourself with the crew, like if a gunner is still alive or has been knocked out temporarily or permanently. There are status effects that impact the efficiency of any given unit as well, and in more intense battles, these all become elements that need managing, with options like closing down hatches on a vehicle to bring your gunner in, keeping him safe, but limiting the offensive capabilities of said vehicle. It's little details like this that made me realize that this game is looking to be a solid RTS first and a Terminator game second, which is exactly how I want developers to approach licensed games. There's a fairly large selection of troops from each of the factions, and all in all, this feels like it'll be a really nice way to finally get a solid Terminator RTS. If you're even remotely curious, I recommend checking it out during Next Fest. I'm sure there's tons more to check out during Next Fest, and I'll be doing so on the channel over the course of the next couple of weeks myself as well. If you found something you liked in this video, consider hitting the like button, and if you have any recommendations based on what you've seen during Next Fest yourself, either for me or anybody else watching, fire them off in the comments. Otherwise, for more strategy, city building, and sim gaming content, you might want to consider subscribing to this channel, and for more details on Pioneers of Pagonia, don't hesitate to check out the video linked on screen right now. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly, and of course, a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.